And we are back on the WCW tribute radio show here. We are joined by someone who was with WCW during the glory days of the Monday Night War. She is a former Nitro Girl. We are joined by Chae. Chae, how are you doing today?
Great. How is everybody? It's so great to talk to you.
Oh, thank you so much for coming on. A few questions about WCW and your time there. If you don't mind, let's go ahead and get started.
Sure.
Okay, so first of all, how did you get involved with WCW, and more notably, how did you get involved with the Nitro Girls?
Well, I was very lucky. I was at the time cheering for the Falcons, and one of the girls, one of the Nitro Girls, AC Jazz, she was a former Falcons cheerleader. And I think she actually got connected with Kimberly early on in the process of Kimberly putting the group together. Excuse me, putting the group together. And Amy offered Kim, would you like for me to hold an audition and let the, former and current Falcon cheerleaders know to audition for it. So I got very lucky, and I happened to have the look that Kim was looking for, and everything else from then was just, memorable, just experience.
Now, what were some of your fondest memories of that time in WCW? And as I was saying when I was introducing you, you were there during the quote-unquote glory days. How were those days, and what are some of your best memories?
I was there from day one to the very, very last day, over in Panama City 10 years ago. And, gosh, I have so many, many great memories. Well, the biggest thing, I think, is not just memories, but it's the friendship that I've created with the people that work for the company, especially the girls. And we still stay very close in touch. We all have we all have our own new grown-up responsibilities now, so we don't get together as often as we'd like. But we're constantly trying to connect via phone or email, even on Facebook, thankfully now. And in other things, gosh, I would have to say it's just traveling every different city. I mean, from the biggest to the smallest cities in the States. When you fly, you have that book. It's like, for instance, if you fly on Delta on Skybook, if you look to the very back, it shows you a map of U.S. and all the little cities, and I can honestly sit there and check off every one, smallest to the largest cities. And, of course, national tours were incredible. We went to Europe a few times, and one of my favorite national trip was, of course, to Australia. It was like right after their Olympics when after they hosted it. So it's just, gosh, it's just too many to list. And I wish it would have gone on forever, but then again, it's we kind of rode, the great times during the height of it. But I'm just really glad and thankful that I had the opportunity.
Now, we had Spice on our show a few weeks ago, and she was telling us about just how close that you guys actually were, that you really were the best of friends and stayed that way to the end, whereas a lot of the stories we've heard from WCW was that there was a lot of people who would get upset and things like that, even as the women's locker room grew, where it grew from you to, from the 7 or 8 of you to 25 ladies.
Right.
Now, was there any experiences you had in that time that really kind of upset you and left a bad taste in your mouth?
You know what? I have to say I don't remember any. I really don't, because I think that the great thing about it was that we had a chance to really bond and gel before the other girls came along. And for some of us, we spent more time with each other than we did with our significant others, whether it was husbands or boyfriends. And in real life, when you meet somebody by chance and you hang out and you feel that things kind of don't click and you don't really put the time and effort into making that friendship work, and you would just kind of rather kind of part ways. I'm like, I don't really want to hang out with her, or I don't really want to hang out with him. But with us, it's almost like we didn't have a choice but to to put the time and effort in, and it really kind of came down to we had to love each other for what we didn't like each other's were, and we had to, and we obviously loved each other for the things that we liked about each other. So it was like a true relationship. I guess kind of how marriage should be, But instead, people just kind of opted, divorce. But with us, divorce wasn't an option. So we really got to respect, at the end of the day, each other's differences, and kind of focus on the good things and positives of each other. And so when the other girls came along, and it's so incredible. Like I met the most amazing women, during this process, and there weren't any. Sometimes people kind of think that I live in a la la land because I kind of let things kind of roll off of me. I don't notice a lot of things, but so if there was any kind of cattiness, I really didn't notice any. I mean, one thing, if anything, with girls, appearance is everything, and we always kind of, maybe we exchanged some catty words, among each other, about some of the girls' great shaped bodies, as you're eating, a donut, but no, everything was good. I thought, at least.
It sounds like you were really open with, not only being close with the people you started with, as Fire, the AC Jazz, Spice, people like that, but also the Stacy Keeblers and Charmels that came in later on as well.
Yeah, Charmel is like still, one of my best of friends. I moved to Dallas, and she lives in Houston, so it's about 3.5 hour drives. And actually, I went down and saw her last weekend. So it was really good to see her, and they all came to my wedding about a little over 3 years ago, and actually, Spice, Fire, and Tigress, they were all in my wedding.
So you really built relationships that stood the test of time.
Yes.
Now,
yeah. And we joke about it. We're like, oh my gosh, when we're in our 60s and 70s, when we're rocking in our rocking chair, are we going to show our grandkids, the glorious days of us in like little to nothing, and kind of working it in the ring. So it's interesting, but it's a lot of fun.
Yeah. So can you share a funny locker room or a road story from your time in WCW with the Nitro Girls?
Funny. Well, you know what? Not funny, but there was like one thing that I do remember when we went to England on a tour. One of the hotels that we stayed at it wasn't like a major city like London. It was more like maybe Newcastle or something. Apparently, the hotel that we stayed in was haunted. So all the girls kind of had their little stories, and at first it kind of, I think different things happened to them. Like one of the girls, I think her name was Shannon, and her stage name was Baby. She said that she was unpacking a room, and out of nowhere, like a penny hit the window and landed like in front of her, out of nowhere. And I, now that I think about it, I'm like, was it American penny, or was it a euro, or was it a dollar? But and then she said something else. She said, she had a toiletry bag, like a clear plastic bag, and she had all her like lotions and shampoo and stuff in there. And she said it was, when she got it out of her bag, it was still zipped up, but lotion and everything was all over outside of it. And then from there, and she didn't tell many girls. And then from there, like a couple of the girls brought up, and even some of the guys brought up some things that kind of happened to them. And we were at the bar, of course, where else? And, the conversation came up, and the bartender actually told us that the hotel was haunted. So that was kind of eerie. So, from there, I remember I was walking on my tiptoes.
Now, obviously, every company has some issues, and you mentioned earlier that you didn't have any issues in WCW, but was there anything that you saw during your time there that made you think, what's going on here?
What are you talking? Are you talking towards the end?
Right. Yeah. Was there anything that made you kind of realize that the company was sort of on its way out?
No, not at all. Because up until the very end, all I knew was Eric Bischoff was in the picture, very loud and clear. I know that he was trying to find. I think he was trying to tie up the last couple last loose ends to purchase the company. And that's what we heard. And when um, WWE just didn't come into the picture until the very last final second, it seemed like. So it was like a huge surprise to all of us.
And what do you feel caused the demise or the eventual end of WCW?
I'm sorry,
I said,
pause.
what do you think kind of caused that? That put the company in such a peril that they were forced to
Um,
sell.
it's not really my place to say. Like I said, I think I spoke with you before we started rolling. We never consider ourselves as the major league players. We were kind of, you know, the boys were in the major leagues, and we were kind of at most double A, I would say, semi baseball, if you kind of compare it to that. So I didn't really. It's almost like we kind of went in, we were focused on our job, and we didn't really try to meddle too much into the whole drama and the backstage business part of the business. But from what I can say, if I can say this, I think there was just way too much ego, and you always, it's good to always kind of step out of the box and know that you are one of many and not the only one. And and like the world kind of doesn't revolve around you, but I think there were too many people there were too many chiefs, I think, in the tribe. Kind of, that, and I think and it's almost like, we divided and got conquered. We divided ourselves and we got conquered. So, so I think, I think it could have been a really good thing, because it's not like, wrestling was losing its steam, because look at WWE. They're still going strong. And so I think it was self-inflicted, you know, within the top handful of people who, who had a lot of power.
Now, having said that, what do you feel the Nitro Girls contributed to the show?
I think we contributed tremendous things. It's amazing. And you know what's so odd is we actually had a PO box in Atlanta, and somehow I think what happened was somehow, I don't know if you guys know any personal stories, but my brothers and I, we have same first names. We came from Korea, and we have, anyway, so we have same first names. And somehow they found one of my brothers in Atlanta and started sending trading cards and whatnot and photos, for me to sign. So when my brother directed those to me, I signed them, and then I just put our PO box address on it. And this was only to maybe about a handful of people. Now from there, it's just everywhere. And from there, we started getting a lot of mail into to that PO box. So I think that shows that we did make an impression, and I think it was a positive impression. And when Nitro Girls first came on, because we were affiliated with Turner, they wanted more of a family atmosphere, and I think they really did a great job, creating the concept. And it was just, I think we were wholesome, and I think we were very marketable in every level. And we also they used us as goodwill ambassadors. And it was, when people say women of wrestling, immediately, people kind of go back to the traditional role, and they can kind of have somewhat of not a very too positive idea about them. But when you kind of put us out there with, different backgrounds and with this wholesome image, it was so much easier for us to reach so many different level of people, including, which was my favorite, kids. And my favorite was when, one of the first shows after we debuted, this little girl had on a homemade shirt. It said "Future Nitro Girl," and that right there kind of said it all. And that's what we wanted us to represent. And I still believe we did that.
Yeah, that was a really great thing that you were wholesome in an era when the wrestling business was kind of getting a little bit raunchier.
Right. And, and that's when WWE was kind of, they didn't have, they kind of didn't have too many restrictions put on them, but like with us, we had somebody from Turner that kind of went through everything, went through the whole show, making sure that we stayed as family friendly as possible.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. The standards and practices guy always around. What do you miss the most about WCW?
Family. They were family, and oddly enough, on Facebook there's a page where a few of the producers started, and they're doing a reunion party for everybody that was involved with WCW, and I didn't, and it's just, you don't realize that there were hundreds of people that were involved to make each and every one of these shows possible, and I'm so grateful to every one of them, and you don't realize it, but it was a family, and it's amazing how everybody's so excited to have reconnected with everybody. There's this one guy that messaged me on Facebook, and he was the voice of the promos, and not only do we not ever see his face, but he was such a big part of the show, and he was the voice of the promos and any kind of promos that was shot and shown on Nitro, and he did that for like over 6-7 years. And there's so many more of these wonderful people with this great talent that made the show possible, and we're all family, and not even those people that we never got to see, but people we got to see every week, from the cameraman to every crew member to the producers, and it just even the lady that made our costumes and makeup artists, it was family. And every week it was almost like, big families, and they have like a Sunday family dinner at grandma's every Sunday, spaghetti dinner. It was kind of like that. Like every Sunday you went to this, but it was in a different city, but you went to a place where you got to see all your family members, and you got to catch up, and, and then you kind of go off following day, and then you went off knowing that you're going to see them again in a week.
Wow.
So.
And my final question is, you mentioned that you were there from the first day of the Nitro Girls all the way through the end of the last show. What are your memories of that final show?
It was, every time I think about it, I can vision the whole venue like it was yesterday, and gosh, I just remember seeing. If I'm correct, I think Vince's son was there,
right?
And I just remember seeing him, and he just looked so odd. It was like what? It's like seeing a fish out of water. I'm like, what is he doing here? It's just like he didn't belong in this scene that I'm looking at. Again, we still put on our smiles and we did our job, but it was I have to say it was very tough, and it was almost like you're madly in love with somebody, and all of a sudden out of nowhere the person kind of came up to you and said, well, guess what, I'm leaving. It's almost like you were shocked, and you were kind of in denial, and and after that, you were even once like the reality set in, you were even more heartbroken because it was just so rough, and something that you love so much got taken away from you that quickly. So it was hard, and not to mention, some of the girls. I mean, we always knew that Vince wasn't into the dancing concept, but slowly we hear about some of the girls being spoken to, and then and going off, and it was like somebody kind of coming in and handpicking and breaking up the family. It's like running a business and kind of selling it off piece by piece. Yeah. I guess it's also kind of like somebody coming into your house, and holding like an estate sale, and the strangers coming in and taking the things that's dearest to you. I don't know. I guess I could go on forever, but I won't. But overall, the good thing about it is the relationships that we created, are still strong as ever, and memories are great. And I just wish like digital cameras and things like that were so much more, being used then as it is now. Because I mean, if I had, I just wish I had way more photos than I do, just to kind of help me with the memories and just kind of treasure it a bit better.
All right, Chae. Well, I want to thank you for joining us and sharing your memories of your time in WCW.
Well, thank you for having me. I really enjoyed it.
All right.